with Shea Dixon. Go 247. Shea joins us now on the phone line. Shea, how we doing?
Doing well. How are you guys?
Doing good. You ready to overreact to the spring game?
Yeah, sure. I can overreact right now and after. I'm for all of it.
All right. What do you expect to see? First of all, here's a question. Brian Kelly said it's going to be an offense versus defensive game. Is that meaning they can't split it into two teams and they're just going to go maybe some good on good?
I mean, that's kind of what he said. I think it's between, and he keeps going back to, look, we're rebuilding a roster that had 39 available scholarship guys, back for the bowl game. So between, obviously they've got a lot more than that now, but some of these guys, transfers in high school signees don't get here until the summer. A number of guys have been held out for one reason or another. Like John Emery probably wouldn't be available because he kind of tweaked his ankle a little bit, but nothing serious. And then you've got guys like Keishon Butte and Major Burns who are starters who, been injured and had surgery or just rehabbing through that. So, yeah, I think between not having all those guys for aforementioned reasons and having to rebuild the roster in ways that they think probably a glorified scrimmage, more or less, but just good on good, like you said, basically offense versus defense. And he said defense should get points for tackles or picks or whatever it might be. So lopsided score, but hey, if you're jonesing for LSU football, it'll at least be there for you.
If you're looking at the scoreboard during a spring game, please consult your nearest medical professional. That is not a healthy thing to do. Just watch the game, watch the reps, and have a little fun. How do you think they handle the reps with the quarterbacks?
I mean, I'd guess split them up, right? I mean, they said this is a competition that's going to go into, all the way into the fall and across the summer months. I think most people feel like it's the two veterans out there battling, but I don't think they're going to give those two some major lion's share and not let Nussmeier and even Howard get out there and throw it around some. So I would expect everyone to play. I think I've heard Kelly say this a couple times, and we'll see if it applies to the spring game or not, is I don't care who, and I'm not trying to find out who the starters are right now or who the two deep is and who's the guy at this spot or that spot. Rather, you have to think about this, an entire staff minus Brad Davis is going to try to put together film on every guy on the roster to see what they have. And then over the summer, you kind of get a lot better feel for what you got. And then in fall camp, it becomes a lot more specified in terms of who's getting the most reps and who isn't. So I would imagine if they're sticking to what they've done all spring, everybody's going to get in there.
Obviously, you're not going to be winning any football games during the spring, but to me, the most intriguing things are guys who kind of lower on the depth chart and kind of work their ways up. A guy to me is Will Campbell, who's done that. Is there anyone on the defensive side of the ball that's kind of not been a guy we've been talking about, but kind of worked his way up to the ones right now?
Well, Savion Jones is one that seems to be in a really deep D-line group, a guy that still managed to get himself up right behind Ali Gay as, a defensive end and someone who could play a good bit this coming year. And he was great at St. James. I mean, he left as a pretty highly ranked prospect and had a really good year when they went to the state title and won it and then finished strong as a senior. So he got his feet wet last year, and now this year it seems like he's going to be moving up into a bigger role. I guess if I'm looking kind of up and down the roster, as you mentioned, Will Campbell sort of started a domino effect on the O-line, and maybe we'll see if they didn't shift into spots now with him at left tackle and Cameron Wire and Marcus Dumerville at right tackle battling and figuring out the middle there if they're not kind of set or at least kind of figured out a five that they really like. But I'd say Mike Jones would be another, and Greg Penn at linebacker, two guys who didn't start last year but are getting a ton of first-team reps this spring. And obviously with Matt House, the D coordinator, also working with linebackers, he works pretty closely with those two. But we'll see Baskerville play plenty. They took a transfer in West Weeks. They've got a guy like Harold Perkins showing up this summer. But I think those two, Penn and Jones, have used these 14, 15 practices so far to really make a big impact on the new staff.
Shea Dixon, Go 247, our guest here. This is not a guy who's going to start, but a guy that a lot of people were high on, and I'm curious if you've heard in your reports on Quincy Wiggins. Got every tool in the toolbox, but is raw. I think this is a good time for him in terms of the spring to kind of get into some fundamentals when they don't have to worry about getting ready for a game.
Oh, you summed it up great. I think almost every offer Quincy Wiggins picked up was in person because he had played his first year of football was the 2020 season, which was the COVID year. So it was already a shortened year, and he played those games at Madison Prep, and then he went, probably off about 5 or 6 games of film, touring around to colleges. And I can remember when he walked into LSU, they were pretty much like, all right, we'll offer you right now before camp even starts, basically, because he just looks the part. I mean, you can tell by his frame that he's going to continue to add weight. He's exactly what you want an SEC defensive end, edge rusher to look like. And he got a full year at Madison Prep, obviously, this past year under his belt. So Raw is right. I mean, he's going to be in his first year. He's an early enrollee, so that really helps him. So you don't set the bar super high right away, but I think he's a guy, even much like Savion Jones, a deep defensive line group. He's one of the younger guys, obviously one of the young gifts. But if Jamar Kane and that defensive side, the coaches can kind of bring him along quickly over the spring and summer, you'd have to think they're going to throw him out there, get his feet wet, and see what he can start to do for you. And I think they can afford to do that with how good they are across the D-line when it comes to giving a few of these guys a breather.
I know this quarterback competition has kind of been the talking point of this whole spring, but to me, a guy that's kind of been lost in it all is Walker Hott. I've heard he's had actually a really good spring this far. Do you see a world where he actually plays a snap this year? Or you think they're going to keep him far away from the field next seation?
Yeah, I think he stays far away, and I think that's good, right? I mean, I know everyone's looking for instant gratification out of the transfer portal, and guys should come in ready to start, but it's you're more benefited as a program and certainly as a quarterback in the SEC if you get a little time to kind of just settle into the college game. And he was coming off an injury, a couple injuries as a senior. He kind of gritted through all of them, and he's probably gritting through spring ball a bit with that hand. But with Brennan and Daniels, two vets in front of him, and then even there, if it goes beyond that, Nussmeier has certainly been out on the field before. He's got a year under his belt. He would be much more game ready. So I think the goal, even from Howard's camp, would be to take a red shirt, and we'll see if guys like Brennan and Daniels are even on the roster a year from now, and if he's not moved up into a quarterback competition with Nussmeier to start.
Any recruiting angle on the spring game? Visitors, is that something that this staff is going to do?
Yeah, it's going to actually be a really big weekend. They've got a couple of 5-stars coming in. Their biggest visitor is Dante Moore, the number 5 overall player in the country, but the number 3 quarterback. So you've got that kind of tight group of Arch Manning, Dante Moore, a couple of guys ranked really high as quarterbacks. And he's kind of the one guy I'd say that Joe Sloan and them have circled as kind of when you're looking at the very top, recruits in the country, he'd be one of the priorities. And the staff had recruited him at Notre Dame previously, so they've got some familiarity with him, at least from Brian Kelly's standpoint. And we'll see where it goes. He visited in March. He'll be back this weekend. They've got another 5-star out of Miami coming in, a receiver in Jalen Brown. They've got another top 50 receiver in Carnell Tate coming from Florida. And kind of I would note, Hunt, that more guys, and they've already got one commitment from a kid in Missouri in Mac Markway, a tight end, but they've got a Minnesota prospect coming in Jackson Howard. They've got obviously a number of guys coming in from Louisiana and Texas and Georgia, but tapping into the Midwest and even onto the East Coast is something we haven't seen a ton of. I mean, LSU would obviously offer those guys, but in terms of them coming down and visiting, I mentioned right off the top a guy, Dante Moore, is from Detroit, Michigan. I think the combination of, yes, a national brand, but also Kelly and a number of coaches who, have a lot of ties and are familiar with recruiting guys in the Midwest. And I'm not saying they're going to go camp out there and take everyone, but certainly when you look across at who the top 50, 100 players are in those areas, a number of them, almost probably double digits, have stopped by LSU at some point this spring.
Is it right that I heard that this staff's going to be a little more selective with the amount of offers that they give out than previous staffs here? Is that something I just made up?
Maybe made it up. I think it could be true. I think right now it's true because they're getting to know all these guys for the first time. And I think a lot of it has been come in for a visit, let's, see where things are, and then we make that offer. So I will say that not everyone the previous staff had offered has been, quote unquote, re-offered or is being pursued right now by the current staff. And obviously there's some other guys that have popped under the radar that they're now pursuing. So maybe too early to call, but I think if you probably go back and look at maybe how Notre Dame approached things, it would be pretty similar because when it comes to offers and certainly kind of what your board is and who you're pressing for and how many guys you're pressing for, a lot of that can probably just get dictated by the head coach and kind of however he approached it at Notre Dame is probably a blueprint he's comfortable bringing down here. And I think a lot of that, Hunt, is probably just getting to know the guys, getting to know their family, getting that fit for or feel for if they're a fit in the type of program he wants to run.
Shady, we appreciate the time. Have a good weekend.
Yeah, I'll see y'all out there.
Thanks so much for watching Hunt Hill on YouTube.
Now do us a favor. Hit the red subscribe button below and throw us a like. We'll see you next time.